The security feed flickered across my 3 primary visual receptors, and I felt my chelicerae click together in disbelief. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. For 17 cycles, I had monitored this quarantine sector with meticulous precision. 17 cycles of cataloging every lethal organism, every toxic plant, every environmental hazard that made Verdant 9 the most dangerous biosphere in the known galaxy. The mortality rate for trained combat units was 93%. For civilian personnel, we simply didn't allow them planetside. And yet, there she was, a human, walking, alone, into the silent jungle. Command, this is Surveillance Officer Kretvik. I need confirmation on something utterly absurd. My manipulator appendages danced across the control panel, zooming in on the thermal signature. Did anyone authorize a human to enter Sector 7? The response crackled through my comm unit. Negative, Kretvik. All human personnel are confined to the research station. Why? Because one of them is currently strolling through the deadliest square kilometer on this miserable rock like she's on a recreational hike. Silence. Then, repeat that? I magnified the image. The human female appeared to be in her mid-reproductive years by their standards, wearing nothing but standard expedition gear. No combat armor, no plasma shield, no probability-defying luck that the species was somehow famous for. Just boots, cargo pants, a jacket, and what appeared to be a scanning device on her belt. Oh, and a honey badger. Yes, you heard that correctly. A Terran honey badger. That small mammalian nightmare that every sensible species had classified as a level 4 aggressive threat despite its ridiculous size, was padding along beside her like some sort of domesticated companion animal. Her vital signs? Command demanded. I checked. Calm. Steady. Her heart rate is actually lower than baseline. She's either in shock or… I paused, my secondary brain struggling to process the data. Or she's completely relaxed. That's medically impossible given the pheromone saturation in that sector. I'm aware of that, yes. The fear-inducing spores alone should have her catatonic. The human designation. Dr. Maya Hartwell, according to the personnel files I pulled up frantically, stopped walking. She knelt down, and I watched in absolute horror as she extended one unprotected hand toward a cluster of midnight blossom. A plant whose pollen caused immediate respiratory failure in 47 known species. She touched it. Actually touched it. The blossom swayed gently, releasing a small puff of deadly particulate matter, and the human simply waved it away from her face with casual disregard. The honey badger, meanwhile, had wandered over to a rotting log and was tearing it apart with its claws, completely ignoring the swarm of pierce beetles that should have been burrowing into its flesh. The beetles were backing away. The beetles were backing away from the mammal. Command, I think we have a situation. Define situation. The kind where I question everything I know about xenobiology and predator-prey dynamics. Doctor. Hartwell stood up, made a note on her handheld device, and continued walking. The honey badger, apparently satisfied with its log destruction, trotted after her. I noticed something else then. The ambient noise on the audio feed, normally a cacophony of screeches, howls, and warning calls, had diminished to almost nothing. The jungle was quiet, hence the name, I supposed. But this was different. This wasn't the eerie silence of a dead zone. This was the silence of 1,000 predators holding their collective breath, watching, waiting, not attacking. Kretvik, what's her trajectory? I calculated quickly. If she maintains current heading, she'll reach the ravine of teeth in approximately 43 minutes. The ravine? The one where we lost an entire battalion? That would be the one, yes. Redirect her. Immediately. With what? A strongly worded message? She's in a calm dead zone. I felt my stress pheromones spiking. Should I send a retrieval team? Another pause. We both knew what that meant. Any team we sent would likely die before reaching her. The question was whether command valued one human's life over potentially 6 to 8 trained soldiers. Negative. Continue monitoring. Alert me to any changes. Typical. I settled back into my observation couch, all 6 of my eyes focused on the screen. The human had reached a small clearing now, and she sat down on a fallen tree trunk, pulling out what appeared to be a ration bar. The honey badger immediately demanded its share with a series of aggressive chirps, and the human actually laughed. The sound came through crystal clear on the audio feed, and I flinched. That laugh, so unguarded, so free of the fear that should have been consuming her. "You're an absolute menace, Winston," she said to the creature, breaking off a piece of the bar. "You know that?" Winston. She had named it. The level 4 threat had a name. The honey badger accepted the food with what could only be described as smug satisfaction, then promptly wandered off to investigate a nearby bush. Dr. Hartwell took a drink from her canteen, and I noticed her eyes scanning the tree line. Not with fear, with curiosity, professional interest. "Remarkable," she murmured. "The biodiversity here is off every chart. Look at that, Winston. Symbiotic relationship between the crawler vine and the host tree. The vine provides structural support while the tree shares nutrients through root grafting. Elegant." I checked her file again. Xenobotanist. Of course. Only a human would send a plant specialist into a jungle that ate people. Though, to be fair, her credentials were impressive. 3 doctorates, published over 60 papers, specialist consultant to the Galactic Agricultural Council, and apparently, owner of 1 psychotic mustelid. A sound made my antennae stiffen. Low, rumbling, coming from the northern edge of the clearing. "Oh no," I whispered. "No, no, no. Shadow stalker. One of the apex predators. 4 meters of muscle, fang, and predatory intelligence. They hunted in packs, used coordinated tactics, and had acid saliva that could melt through standard body armor in seconds. 3 of them emerged from the undergrowth, their 6 legs moving with disturbing synchronization. Their eye stalks swiveled, fixing on the human. I saw their hunting stance, the way their dorsal spines erected. "Attack formation." Dr. Hartwell looked up from her notes. She saw them. I waited for the scream, the panic, the desperate attempt to flee that would only trigger their chase instinct. Instead, she sighed. "Winston, we have visitors." The honey badger turned around, assessed the situation with what I swear was disdain, and made a sound I can only describe as an annoyed grunt. Then it did something that made my primary brain shut down temporarily from sheer confusion. It charged. At the shadow stalkers. A 2-kilogram mammal charged at 3 4-meter predators. The lead stalker reared back, clearly as confused as I was. Winston reached it, latched onto its lower leg with teeth and claws, and proceeded to administer what the humans call a proper thrashing. The stalkers shrieked, a sound I'd only heard them make when dying, and tried to shake the creature off. Winston held on. The stalker's companions backed away, their body language shifting from predatory to deeply uncertain. Dr. Hartwell hadn't moved. She simply sat there, calmly eating her ration bar, watching her companion absolutely demolish a creature 30 times its size. "Winston, that's enough," she called out. "Come on. Let them retreat with some dignity." The honey badger, and I cannot believe I'm reporting this accurately, actually listened. It released its grip, landed on all 4s, and made a threatening lunge forward. All 3 shadow stalkers turned and fled. Fled, into the jungle, from something they could have swallowed whole. Winston trotted back to Dr. Hartwell, who scratched behind its ears. "Good boy. Aggressive, but effective. We've discussed your diplomacy skills." "Command," I said, my voice barely functioning. "Are you seeing this?" "We're seeing it, Kredvik. We're not believing it, but we're seeing it." The human stood up, brushed off her pants, and continued walking. Deeper into the jungle, toward the ravine. I pulled up the geographical data, feeling a sense of impending catastrophe. The ravine of teeth wasn't just dangerous because of the terrain. It was dangerous because of what lived in it. Specifically, the broodmother, a creature so lethally territorial that we'd marked the entire area as a permanent no-go zone. "She's going to die," I said flatly. "Command," she's walking directly toward the broodmother's territory. Can we contact the research station? Get someone she knows to reach out? Already tried. Nobody even knows she's gone. She apparently requisitioned a rover, filed a solo expedition permit, and left before dawn. Standard procedure, apparently, for their research protocols. Standard. Solo expeditions into lethal biospheres are standard. For humans? I'm starting to think yes. Dr. Hartwell was talking again, recording observations into her device. Something about fungal networks and chemical communication between root systems. Meanwhile, Winston had discovered what appeared to be a nest of something and was systematically destroying it with enthusiasm. The somethings, whatever they were evacuating rapidly without attempting any defense. The ecosystem response is fascinating, Dr. Hartwell narrated. Normally, I'd expect aggressive territorial behavior from native fauna, but there's an unusual pattern of avoidance, almost as if. She paused, frowning. As if they're deferring. She was noticing. Of course she was noticing. Humans didn't survive to become the galaxy's most adaptable species by being unobservant. Winston, come here. The honey badger obliged, and she knelt down to examine it. Are you producing some kind of pheromone? Something that's triggering flight responses? She pulled out a small scanner, running it over the animal's fur. Interesting. Elevated stress markers in the environment, but not from you. From them. They're afraid of you. But why? Because, I thought but couldn't say, even the wildlife on this nightmare planet has enough sense to recognize pure concentrated chaos when it sees it. That animal is a compact ball of fearless aggression. And somehow, every creature here knows it. The human checked her chronometer. Another hour to the ravine. Let's maintain current pace. She knows, I said to command. She knows where she's going. Then why is she going there? I scanned through her expedition permit, looking for her stated research goals. Found it. Felt my chelicerae click together again. She's looking for the echo lily. It only grows in deep ravines. Supposedly has unique adaptive properties that could revolutionize agriculture on low-light worlds. She's risking her life for a flower? Welcome to humanity. Population. Insane. The terrain was getting rougher now, the massive trees giving way to rocky outcroppings and steep slopes. Dr. Hartwell navigated them with practiced ease, occasionally offering a hand down to Winston, who accepted the assistance with what I interpreted as grudging appreciation. They were a team. An absolutely bizarre, physics-defying team, but a team nonetheless. That's when the ground started shaking. Oh, wonderful, I muttered. Right on schedule. The brood mother, emerging from her subterranean lair, attracted by the vibrations of footsteps above. I watched the seismic sensors spike, triangulated her position. She was massive, easily 30 meters long, with mandibles that could shear through steel, and a neurotoxin that caused every pain receptor to fire simultaneously until the victim's heart gave out. Dr. Hartwell stopped walking. She felt it too. The vibration. The displacement of earth and stone. She turned slowly, scanning the area, her hand moving to the scanner at her belt. Winston had gone completely still, hackles raised, eyes fixed on a point behind them. The brood mother erupted from the ground like a living avalanche. Segments upon segments of armored carapace, hundreds of legs. Those terrible mandibles spread wide in a threat display that had sent soldiers fleeing in primal terror. She reared up, her head section level with the treetops, and released a challenge scream that made my audio sensors crackle with distortion. Dr. Hartwell watched this happen. Then she did something that I will remember until my final molt. She raised one hand in greeting. Hello there. Sorry for the intrusion. Just passing through. Beautiful coloration, by the way. That iridescent blue is stunning. The brood mother stopped screaming. Her head lowered, eye stalks extending, examining this tiny creature that had just complimented her appearance. Winston, for his part, hadn't attacked. He was watching, waiting, following the human's lead. I'm not here for your territory, Doctor. Hartwell continued, her voice calm, conversational. I'm a researcher. I'm looking for a specific plant. The echo lily. Have you seen any around here? They like dark, moist environments like ravines. Was she seriously attempting to have a conversation with a creature that had killed hundreds? The broodmother's mandibles clicked together in a pattern I'd never seen before. Not aggressive. More like confusion, curiosity. Her head tilted, processing this strange interaction. Then, and I had to replay the footage 3 times to confirm, she lowered her head completely and extended one of her smaller frontal appendages, pointing down into the ravine behind her. "Doctor." Hartwell followed the gesture. "Down there? Thank you. That's incredibly helpful. I appreciate your cooperation." She started walking toward the ravine, toward the broodmother's territory. The massive creature watched her go, then did something even more incomprehensible. She moved aside, cleared a path. "Command, I need you to verify that I haven't had a psychotic break, and that this is actually happening." Verified. Kretvik. We're all hallucinating together, apparently. Dr. Hartwell and Winston descended into the ravine, using a combination of climbing and controlled sliding. The walls were sheer, slick with moisture, covered in bioluminescent moss that cast everything in an eerie green glow. This was the broodmother's nursery, where she kept her eggs, where her defensive instincts should have been at their absolute peak. And there were the echo lilies, dozens of them, growing in clusters along the ravine floor, their petals opening and closing in patterns that mimicked sound waves. "Doctor." Hartwell made a sound of pure delight, pulling out collection containers and her sampling kit. "Winston. Stay close. Don't touch anything that looks like an egg." The honey badger sniffed around, examined several large, oval shapes embedded in the ravine walls, and apparently decided they weren't interesting enough to destroy. Instead, he plopped down next to Dr. Hartwell, keeping watch while she worked. I watched her collect samples with careful precision. She took cuttings, soil samples, spore collections, all while narrating her observations. The broodmother had returned to the surface but hadn't left. I could see her on thermal, a massive heat signature positioned directly above the ravine. Watching, waiting, protecting. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Hartwell said, examining a particularly large specimen. "The cellular structure is unlike anything I've seen. The way these petals modulate air pressure to create sound mimicry, it's brilliant. And the root system. Look at this, Winston. It's actually synthesizing nutrients from minerals in the rock itself. This could change everything for subterranean agriculture." She was having a breakthrough scientific moment, in a death trap, next to a level 4 threat, under the supervision of an apex predator that should have killed her on sight. Humanity, I decided, was either blessed by some cosmic force we didn't understand, or cursed with a complete inability to recognize danger. "Doctor." Hartwell finished her collection, carefully packing everything into sealed containers. She stood up, stretching, and looked around at the ravine one last time. "Thank you," she said, and I realized she was talking to the broodmother above. "Your territory is beautiful. These lilies will help a lot of people." The climb back up was harder than the descent, but she managed it, Winston clinging to her backpack. When she reached the top, the broodmother was waiting. For a long moment, human and creature regarded each other. Then Dr. Hartwell reached into her pack, pulled out her ration bars, and placed 3 of them on the ground. "For your trouble. It's not much, but it's what I have." The broodmother's mandibles clicked again, a different pattern this time, almost like amusement, satisfaction. She lowered her head, nudged the ration bars with one antenna, then retreated back toward her lair entrance, carrying the offerings with her. "Doctor." Hartwell started the trek back toward the research station, Winston at her side, pack full of samples. I watched them go, my mind struggling to process everything I'd witnessed. The jungle began to fill with sound again, the normal cacophony of a thriving ecosystem. But now, the calls seemed different, less aggressive, more like acknowledgement. "Command, subject is returning to the research station. ETA, 90 minutes. Any injuries?" "None. Not even a scratch." "And the sample collection?" "Successful. She got what she came for." A long pause. Then, Kretvik, this recording is going into the database as a case study, with a classification of, I don't even know what classification to give. Might I suggest? Humanity? ? Do not attempt to understand. That works. Good job maintaining surveillance. The comm clicked off. I sat back in my observation couch, watching Dr. Hartwell's steady progress through the jungle on my screens. She was humming now. A tune I didn't recognize. Winston was practically prancing, clearly proud of their successful expedition, and somewhere behind them, in the silent jungle, 1,000 deadly creatures returned to their routines, seemingly unbothered by the fact that 2 tiny mammals had just strolled through their territory like they owned the place. Because maybe, in some way I would never fully comprehend, they did. The human factor, we called it in official reports. That inexplicable quality that made them simultaneously vulnerable and unstoppable. That made them befriend creatures that should be their predators and survive situations that should be their end. I had 17 cycles of observation experience. I thought I understood this sector of Verdant 9. Turns out, I didn't understand anything. And somehow, one human with a honey badger had just taught me that lesson better than any training ever could. 3 solar rotations later, I was still filing reports about the incident when my console lit up with proximity alerts. Multiple signals, human signatures, approaching from the research station. Oh, what fresh insanity is this? I muttered, pulling up the feeds. Not one human, 7. Led by Dr. Maya Hartwell, naturally, with that menace Winston trotting alongside her. The group included what appeared to be xenobiologists, geologists, and atmospheric specialists based on their equipment. They were loaded with survey gear, climbing apparatus, and enough scientific instruments to stock a mobile laboratory, and they were heading back into Sector 7. Command, we have a situation. Again, multiple humans entering the quarantine zone. Please tell me you're joking. I don't possess a humor subroutine sophisticated enough for this level of absurdity. I zoomed in on the group. They were chatting. Actually, chatting. One of them, a male with graying hair and weathered features, was gesturing animatedly while explaining something to the others. Dr. Hartwell was pointing out landmarks, presumably from her previous expedition. Did they file permits? Command asked, resignation heavy in their tone. I checked. Yes. Full expedition charter. Approved by their research director. 7 humans. Duration of 5 planetary rotations. Objective listed as comprehensive ecological survey. Their director approved this. Apparently. After Dr. Hartwell presented her findings from the Echo Lily samples, their entire department decided the risk was acceptable. The risk is acceptable for the jungle that has a 93% mortality rate. Those were the statistics for our combat units, I pointed out. Perhaps human statistics operate on different mathematical principles, like their physics, and their biology, and their approach to self-preservation. The group had reached the jungle perimeter now. They paused, conducting what appeared to be a safety briefing. Dr. Hartwell was speaking, the others listening intently. Winston had wandered off to investigate a suspicious rock, determined it guilty of existing, and was now attempting to overturn it. Are we sending an observer team? I asked. Negative. Last time we discussed that, remember? We don't have personnel to spare. Just maintain surveillance and prepare emergency extraction protocols, which won't work if they're in the dead zones. I'm aware, Kretvik. Just do your job. The comm went silent. I settled in, resigned to watching another impossible scenario unfold. The humans entered the silent jungle. The effect was immediate. That same eerie quiet descended. But this time I was monitoring broader spectrum analysis. The pheromone saturation shifted. Territorial markers that predators had maintained for cycles were being abandoned, pulled back. The entire ecosystem was recalibrating around these 7 walking anomalies. This is Dr. Hartwell, one of them said into a recording device. Expedition log, Day 1. We've entered what local monitoring stations call the silent jungle. Initial observations confirm my earlier findings. Ambient threat displays are minimal despite the known concentration of predatory species. Hypothesis: the local fauna have learned to recognize human presence as non-threatening, or possibly as apex markers. Further study required. Maya, look at this, another human called out. A female with bright equipment harnesses. She was examining a tree trunk. Claw marks. Fresh. These grooves matched the shadow stalker profile from the database. Dr. Hartwell approached, Winston following like a furry shadow. She ran her fingers over the marks. Deep. Probably made within the last rotation. They're still in the area. Should we be concerned? Asked a younger male, eyes scanning the canopy nervously. Only if we threaten them. Give space, show respect. Don't make sudden aggressive movements. Think of it like encountering wildlife on Earth. They're not interested in us unless we become interesting. By interesting, you mean prey-shaped? Exactly. They continued deeper. I tracked multiple heat signatures converging on their position. Shadow stalkers. 6 of them this time, moving through the canopy with practiced stealth. They were circling, evaluating, demonstrating complex pack behavior that our military analysts had documented extensively. The humans seemed oblivious. They were collecting samples, measuring atmospheric composition, documenting plant species. One of them was actually lying on the ground, examining fungal networks with a magnification tool. The shadow stalkers closed in. 20 meters. 15. 10. Then, Winston looked up, made eye contact with the lead stalker, released that same annoyed grunt I'd heard before. The entire pack froze. The lead stalker's eye stalks retracted slightly. Recognition flashed across what passed for its face. Then, in perfect synchronization, all 6 predators altered course, giving the human group a wide berth before disappearing back into the canopy. Did you see that? The male on the ground asked, looking up. Shadow stalkers, Dr. Hartwell confirmed calmly. They remembered. Remembered what? That we're not worth the trouble. I made a note in my log. Human confidence appears to be contagious among their groups. Individual bravery amplifies into collective certainty. Possibly a survival mechanism. Possibly mass delusion. Further observation required. By midday, the expedition had covered significant ground. They documented 17 new plant species, collected mineral samples from exposed rock faces, and set up monitoring equipment to track environmental changes. They worked with efficient coordination, each person knowing their role, trusting their teammates completely. And wherever they went, the jungle adapted around them. Command, I'm seeing behavioral patterns I can't explain. What now? The native species aren't just avoiding the humans, they're accommodating them. A crusher vine just retracted from a path the humans needed to use. Pierce beetles are relocating their colonies to avoid the campsite they're establishing. It's like the ecosystem is making room. Ecosystems don't make room, Kretvik. They maintain equilibrium. Then this equilibrium has been fundamentally altered by human presence. The humans set up camp in a clearing. Proper camp, with shelters, equipment stations, and a perimeter marked by scanning devices. Dr. Hartwell established the center area, while the others worked on their specific zones. Winston supervised everything, periodically wandering off to enforce his authority over various rocks, logs, and unsuspecting insects. As evening approached, something unexpected happened. The brood mother emerged, not in threat display, in approach pattern, cautious, but purposeful. She stopped at the camp perimeter, her massive form casting shadows across the entire clearing. The humans noticed. Several reached for tools that could be used as weapons. Dr. Hartwell raised one hand. Wait, let me handle this. She walked forward, alone, stopping a respectful distance from the creature. Hello again. We're staying nearby for a few rotations. Is that going to be a problem? The brood mother's mandibles clicked. That same pattern I'd heard before. Communication? Surely not. These creatures operated on instinct and territorial imperative, not language. Yet, the rhythm, the deliberate nature of the clicks, suggested intention. Dr. Hartwell tilted her head, listening. Then she did something that stopped my primary heart. She clicked back, mimicking the pattern. Poorly, but recognizably. The broodmother's eye stalks extended fully. Every member of the human expedition went completely still. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the massive creature lowered her head in what I could only interpret as an acknowledgement gesture, turned, and retreated back toward her ravine. "Did you just communicate with that thing?" one of the humans asked, voice shaking slightly. "I think so. Maybe. I'm not sure." But she acknowledged us. "We're not threats. We're..." Dr. Hartwell paused, searching for words. "Neighbors. Temporary neighbors. They established watch rotations that night, but nobody was attacked. Nothing approached the camp. I monitored thermal signatures throughout the dark hours, documenting the presence of dozens of predatory species in the surrounding area. They hunted each other. They competed for resources. They maintained their normal behavioral patterns. They just didn't approach the humans." Day 2 brought more revelations. The geologist, a stocky male named Torres, discovered cave systems beneath the jungle floor. Extensive networks that connected to underground water sources. The team decided to explore one entrance, with Dr. Hartwell insisting on proper safety protocols. Helmets, lights, communication tethers, and nobody goes anywhere alone. These caves could have anything in them. They descended into darkness. I switched to enhanced thermal imaging, tracking their progress through layers of rock and soil. The caves were vast, cathedral-like chambers connected by narrow passages, and they weren't empty. Glimmer serpents. Dozens of them. Translucent, bioluminescent, highly territorial reptilian creatures that could phase partially through solid matter. Their venom caused cellular disruption on a molecular level. We'd classified them as Level 5 threats, the highest danger rating. The humans' lights swept across the serpents' resting places. The creatures stirred, bodies beginning to glow with warning patterns. Several coiled into strike positions, their heads tracking the human movements with predatory focus. Winston, being carried in Dr. Hartwell's pack, poked his head out. He assessed the situation, and I swear I could see calculation in those small eyes. Then he made a sound. Not aggressive, more like a question. A chirp that echoed through the cave system. The glimmer serpents stopped. Their glow patterns shifted from warning red to curious blue. One of the larger specimens slithered forward, its body reflecting the human's lights in prismatic displays. It approached Winston, who had climbed out of the pack, and was now standing on Dr. Hartwell's shoulder. They regarded each other. Mammal and serpent. Two creatures that should have been locked in predator-prey dynamics. Instead, the serpent extended its head, and Winston touched noses with it in what looked disturbingly like a greeting between friends. "Are we all seeing this?" "And," Torres whispered. "Recording everything," another human confirmed, her voice filled with wonder. "This is groundbreaking. Interspecies communication across completely different biological systems." The serpent retreated, and the others parted, creating a clear path through the cave. An invitation or simply tolerance? I couldn't determine. The humans proceeded carefully, documenting the cave formations, the unique crystalline structures that grew in complete darkness, and the underground ecosystem that thrived without sunlight. They found water, pure, filtered through kilometers of rock, untouched by surface contamination. They found mineral deposits worth fortunes. They found evidence of geothermal activity that could power research stations for decades. And they found something else. "Maya, you need to see this," Torres called from a side chamber. The team gathered around his position. I enhanced the video feed, trying to understand what they were looking at. It appeared to be a wall carving. No, not carved. Grown. The rock had been shaped by some biological process, creating patterns and symbols that suggested intention and meaning. "These markings," Dr. Hartwell said, running her scanner across them, "they're old, thousands of cycles old, but look at the patterns. They repeat. This is language. Language? Here? But we classified this planet as pre-sentient, Maybe we classified it wrong. They spent hours documenting the chamber, photographing every symbol, taking material samples, and measuring spatial relationships. The implications were staggering. If this planet had supported an intelligent species in the past, or still did, everything we thought we knew about Verdant 9 was incorrect. We need to report this, one of them said. Not yet, Dr. Hartwell replied. We need to understand what we're looking at first. If we report evidence of sentient life prematurely, Command will lock down this entire sector. No more research. No more exploration. Just military containment. That's protocol. Protocol doesn't lead to understanding. Let's finish the survey. Document everything. Then we present comprehensive findings that can't be dismissed or buried. They were planning to circumvent official procedures. I should have reported this immediately. Instead, I found myself agreeing with their logic. Hasty military intervention had destroyed more opportunities for genuine understanding than it had prevented threats. I said nothing to Command. First time in my career I'd withheld information. Apparently, human behavior was contagious even through surveillance equipment. Day 3 brought them to the ravine again. The broodmother was waiting, but this time she wasn't alone. Smaller versions of herself, juveniles, were visible in the ravine depths. Her offspring, she was showing them to the humans deliberately. She's introducing us, Dr. Hartwell said quietly. This is trust. She's demonstrating that we're safe for her young to observe. One of the juveniles, about the size of a large transport vehicle, approached the ravine edge curiously. Winston immediately went into protective mode, positioning himself between the young creature and the humans, not aggressively, defensively. Like a guard, the juvenile clicked its mandibles. Winston chirped back. They seemed to reach some kind of understanding, and the young broodmother retreated back to its parent. Winston, you're a terrible bodyguard, Doctor, Hartwell said with amusement. You're supposed to protect us from them, not them from us. The honey badger huffed dismissively and went back to investigating rocks. The expedition continued mapping the ravine system, discovering that it connected to the underground caves. The entire area was one massive ecosystem operating on multiple levels. Surface predators, subsurface dwellers, and deep cave species all coexisting in complex relationships we'd completely missed. We've been monitoring this sector for cycles, one of the humans said, reviewing their data. How did we miss all of this? Because we were looking for threats, Dr. Hartwell replied. Not relationships. We cataloged every dangerous species but never considered that danger might not be the primary function of their existence. They're not just killing machines. They're parents. They're territorial defenders. They're part of a community. So, what you're saying is, we've been approaching this all wrong? I'm saying we've been approaching this scared. And fear makes terrible science. By day 4, word had somehow spread among the native species. I don't know how. Pheromones? Subsonic communication? Quantum entanglement for all I knew at this point. But creatures began appearing at the camp perimeter. Not threatening, observing, curious. A pack of shadow stalkers sat in the trees, watching the humans work. Glimmer serpents emerged at dusk, their bioluminescence providing natural lighting. Even a ravager, one of the armored herbivores we'd classified as dangerously aggressive, approached to investigate the camp, determined the humans weren't competing for its food sources, and settled down nearby to rest. The camp had become a neutral zone, a meeting ground between species that would normally never coexist peacefully. This is unprecedented, I reported to Command, unable to keep the amazement from my voice. The humans have established a functioning multi-species community in less than one planetary week. That's impossible. I have visual confirmation, multiple feeds. You need to see this. There was a long pause. Then, send all footage for analysis. Mark it highest priority. The council needs to review this. I transmitted everything. Hours of recordings showing impossible cooperation, cross-species communication, and a fundamental rewrite of everything we thought we understood about hostile ecosystems. On day 5, the humans prepared to leave. They packed their equipment methodically, leaving no trace of their presence except the monitoring devices they'd planted with permission from, I kid you not, the brood mother. Dr. Hartwell had actually negotiated equipment placement by showing the creature diagrams and demonstrating that the devices wouldn't harm anything. The brood mother had clicked her approval. As the expedition prepared to depart, something remarkable happened. The native species emerged. All of them. Shadow stalkers, glimmer serpents, ravagers, pierce beetles, even smaller creatures I hadn't properly catalogued. They lined the path back to the research station, not in threat formation, but in what could only be described as an honor guard. They're saying goodbye, Torres said, his voice thick with emotion. Dr. Hartwell stopped, turned to face the assembled creatures, and placed her hand over her heart in a gesture that transcended species barriers. Respect, gratitude, recognition. The brood mother emerged one final time. She approached Dr. Hartwell, lowered her massive head, and released a sound I'd never heard before. Not aggressive, not warning, something else. Something that carried harmonics of acknowledgement and, impossibly, what might have been affection. Winston climbed up to Dr. Hartwell's shoulder and clicked his teeth together in his own farewell. The brood mother's mandibles mirrored the gesture. Then she retreated, her offspring following, back to their ravine home. The humans walked back through the silent jungle, and this time, it wasn't silent at all. The jungle sang. Calls and cries, whistles and clicks, a symphony of life celebrating the visitors who had seen them not as threats to be neutralized, but as beings worthy of understanding. When they reached the research station, Dr. Hartwell turned for one last look at the jungle. We'll be back, she promised, with more people, better equipment, and respect for what you've taught us. I filed my final report that evening. 17 pages of observations, data analysis, and conclusions that would probably get me reassigned for psychological evaluation. Main conclusion: humanity doesn't survive hostile environments by being stronger or more dangerous. They survive by refusing to accept that hostility is the only option. They build bridges where we see only barriers. They make friends where we see only threats. And sometimes, they bring along a honey badger who enforces peace through sheer concentrated stubbornness. Command's response came 3 hours later. Kredvik, your report has been forwarded to the High Council. They're sending a delegation to meet with Dr. Hartwell and her team. Prepare for VIP arrivals within 2 cycles. Understood. What classification should I give this phenomenon? Another pause. Then, human. Just human. Apparently, that's a classification all its own. I signed off and returned to my monitoring station. On the feeds, the silent jungle had returned to its normal patterns. Predators hunted, prey evaded. The ecosystem functioned as it had for millions of cycles. But something had changed. Some fundamental shift in how the creatures there responded to potential threats. They'd learned that not everything unknown was dangerous. That sometimes, the strange visitor might become a friend. And in the ravine, the broodmother settled down with her offspring, 3 half-eaten ration bars carefully preserved in her nest. Gifts from a friend. Treasures from a species that had looked at her and seen not a monster, but a mother. In my 17 cycles of service, I'd witnessed countless military operations, evacuation procedures, and survival scenarios. I'd seen courage, cowardice, strategy, and chaos. But I'd never seen anything like what happened when one human decided that fear was optional and friendship was possible. Winston, that ridiculous level 4 threat, had curled up in his favorite spot in Dr. Hartwell's quarters. Content: safe, dreaming whatever dreams honey badgers have when they're not busy terrifying apex predators. And somewhere in my databanks, 17 pages of observations waited to change everything we thought we knew about first contact, xenobiology, and the fundamental nature of intelligent life. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do isn't to fight, it's to care. And humans, apparently, were absolutely weaponizing compassion across the galaxy. The universe wasn't ready for that. But then again, the universe was never ready for humanity in the first place. They just kept showing up anyway, making friends, building bridges, occasionally bringing along small mammals with disproportionate attitudes, and somehow, impossibly, changing everything.